It counted down and we are live. So welcome to the very first show of the Entity Hour with myself, Terry Van Horn, and the awesome Bill Slosky. It's an honor to be working with Bill.
It's an honor to be working with you, Terry.
Oh, that's always good to hear. Anyhow, the end of the hour is basically going to be me and Bill talking a lot about the semantic web and basically the new SEO. I call it semantic SEO. I don't know if that's the best name, but I think it's getting close to that. You'll see a lot of the old people that I've had on the show for years. I don't need a lot of new people. Just keep going to the same well and dipping when I can. But luckily, I've been around a long time and met a few people over the years. I don't know. What do you think, Bill? Anything you want to add?
Sure. I think semantic SEO isn't a bad term. It captures the concept, the idea that when you search, you're searching for actual things, real world objects, as Google calls them. You're no longer just searching for strings of letters. You're not matching documents with terms that are in a query. You're trying to search for information about certain specific things, or concepts, ideas, topics. And if the search engine can give you information about those things and help you learn more about them, it's doing its job. So as SEOs, our purpose is to help it respond to people in as positive a way as possible. And Google used to crawl the web to create information about links and pages that are connected to each other through links. And now it's doing more data mining than web crawling, or a combination of the two. It's evolving in that direction. It's trying to find information that it can connect together and knowledge about those connections. So it's crawling entities as opposed to crawling web pages. And instead of links, it's looking for relationships between the entities.
So you could almost call it now entity search rather than,
It is entity search. And so you and I were talking about this before the show, and you asked me about if there are any natural language processing patents that Google has come out with. And there's one that focuses upon how Google might extract entity information from web pages. It'll go through a web page. It'll look for nouns that are capitalized because they're often like people's names or place names or business names. And Google might try to see if there's information about those particular entities, like any classifications or any attributes, specific properties of the entities. So if Google's crawling a news website and it gets to the sports page and it sees a story about Bryce Harper, who's a baseball player in the Philadelphia Phillies, it'll say, okay, Bryce Harper. We see he's an outfielder. He hits lots of home runs. He plays for the Phillies.
Used to play with the Nationals.
And he's connecting all this information. It's indexing facts about Bryce Harper, the player. And this is the new Google. And it's creating what it refers to as association scores about those relationships. Bryce Harper plays for the Phillies. It's an 80% chance of him playing for the Phillies based upon how reliable websites like ESPN are that we're finding information about him at. And how popular sites are and how close the facts are to the entity. You see Philadelphia Phillies and Bryce Harper nowadays often appear together in more recent articles. And in older articles, you see Bryce Harper and Washington Nationals closer together. So you can tell he played for the Nationals before, he plays for Phillies now. And it's building these association scores. So Google doesn't have a ranking metric that involves accuracy, but they are building into this entity recognition and entity extraction process confidence scores in how likely it is that something, some classification or some properties or attributes of entities are true.
Right. So it is a type of fact checking in some ways.
So, you know, Barack Obama is married to Michelle Obama because they often appear in the same pages. And even though Barack Obama appears on many pages with Hillary Clinton, you know that he's not married to her because the times they say Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle.
Right.
Right. So it's drawing those connections, and Google's learning from those news sources. It's to some degree, Google's sort of moving away from relying specifically upon places like Wikipedia, which are human-edited knowledge bases, and they have limitations in that they're edited by humans. They have biases. They don't update as quickly as the daily news that comes out every day and gives us more information about topics.
Yeah, I believe that's one of the things that's holding some SEOs back from who've been around a while is they see all of the answers and stuff in the SERP as stealing their traffic.
Well,
which, while they never owned it to begin with, which is the start.
Google's trying to provide information that scales on a web-sized basis, as opposed to, remember the Google directory? It was a copy of DMOZ, and it's Google at some point said, we've had enough of this, we give up. If you want to find information about a topic, just search for it. Don't look it up in our directory anymore. We've stopped publishing it. It doesn't scale on a web-sized basis.
Yeah. It also meets their goal, which is, you know, at some point they don't want people to ever leave Google's webpage.
Well, they want people to continue searching and to see relevant advertisements, because sometimes a relevant advertisement is what people are looking for. Right.
And what I think webmasters have to consider is that those kind of answers that Google is giving, a lot of times the people, Google is actually just saving those users time because they're not going to a website to get the one piece of information that they were looking for that's in a whole page. Like
if your business model is based upon how tall Abraham Lincoln is, and Google's telling people for free that Abraham Lincoln is 6'4", well, it's time for a new business model.
Yes, definitely a time for a new business model.
It's what is my IP address? You ask Google, what is my IP address? It'll tell you. There are websites dedicated to telling you what your IP address is.
Oh, I use it for money calculation. Like I don't look for a currency converter anymore. I just go to Google and it'll do it right there for me.
Right. So these are sort of obsolete business models.
Right.
Google's taken over that because you're limited by your creativity as to what you can put on a web page. And if your creativity says, let's make it the stupidest thing that we can come up with to try to make money, you know, you're limiting yourself.
Well, I think people also, if you really look at the numbers, those kind of queries that were bringing in those kind of visitors were actually a cost, not a benefit, because you have to give them bandwidth in order to serve the pages, and they weren't buying nothing. So and didn't intend to buy anything.
So one of the other natural language processing patents I pointed you to was one where it talked about how Google might answer queries by building knowledge bases per each query. So if you search for an example is you search for best science fiction novels of 2020. Google will return a carousel at the top of those search results showing you a list of books. And it's actually returning the results for your query, looking through them, extracting entities about those book entity information,
Right.
and making a list, making the carousel on the fly. Each time you ask that, best crime novels of 2020, best science fiction novels of 2020, best comedy novels. It's building those carousels on the fly. It's building knowledge graphs from the query that you performed, and then extracting entity information and putting that in a carousel. So, it can be more than just best blah, blah of 2020. It can be best houseplants that filter air quality.
Right. Events. They use carousels quite a bit for events and shopping.
Who won Pulitzer Prize in 2020? So it can be awards.
Right.
It can be songs. It can be movies.
Right. Anything where people would compile a list, basically.
Not every query that you perform that involves entities might give you that type of carousel, but a lot of them do.
Right. Right.
It's kind of interesting. If you want a history of TV shows over the last 20 years, you go best TV shows 1980, best TV shows 1981, best TV shows 1982. And you can see new ones get added, old ones get taken away.
Right.
It gives some idea of the history of TV that you might have grown up with.
They would be where they found new entities in a page that they added to the graph, and it replaced something older.
Right. So Google's returning pages that are about best comedies of 1980 or so on, and it's got lots of results for that. It's building knowledge graph out of those pages where it's finding it's ranking the entities it's extracting to find the most important, the highest ranking ones, including them in the carousel first.
Yeah.
So that list, that carousel you see, is a ranked list.
Yes. I know Google likes those because whenever I do a search for, say, streaming software, right? When I was going to set this up, well, I would say of the top 10 results, a lot of them were lists of the best reviews, basically, of the top software for doing that.
So Google doesn't always return carousels like that for every query that you might have. For instance, the patent that I'm taking that from says they might sort these types of things based upon attributes for the queries. So if you do like best other actors who acted with Tom Hanks, it doesn't give you a carousel.
Right.
But if you search for Tom Hanks, you'll see a knowledge graph with the people also search for in the bottom knowledge graph. And those tend to be people who acted with Tom Hanks.
Right.
So they do they do have that information. They just it's a question of when they display it.
Yeah. Bill gave me 5 patents. They'll be in the show notes. I don't know if we're going to get to discussing all of them because at 1:15 we'll be inviting Dixon in to talk some more about the semantic web, his InLinks .net tool, and a report that he gave on his site about schema and how it can possibly affect rankings. So I'm looking forward to that. Howbeit I just let Dixon into the room and he can join us. So
hi guys.
Hey, Dixon.
It's like
how you doing?
I just managed to completely close down the window and everything. So your last 2 or 3 minutes I completely missed. So
I thought you decided to hightail it while the cat was good.
You should have heard the blue language out here when I did that. I was also trying to record my screen in case you weren't recording it, and I thought, oh no, well I'll forget that then. So I hope you're recording it, Terry. Anyway.
Oh yeah, it's it's recorded on StreamYard, and then I'll be uploading it to the SEO Pros YouTube channel, which I spent a couple of days putting together. And definitely be there to share.
Good. And hi, guys.
Yeah. So to get started, the semantic web has been on SEO's mind for a while. I remember when they first started talking about it, I just yawned and moved on. Because it was a lot like mobile in that people were talking about it like it was going to happen tomorrow. And, it happened 5-6 years later.
As SEOs, we're terrible. I mean, we've all been in this industry for a long, long time. But until we can see a way to measure something, we kind of assume it doesn't actually exist. I remember before Yahoo Site Explorer came out, we had no idea about backlink information at all, really. And then, Moz came out and Majestic came out, and later Ahrefs came out, and all of a sudden, we now could see why the hell that page over there was important when we couldn't see that before. We were just blind, so we just didn't pay much attention to things. And I think there's a real problem with schema, or was a real problem with semantic web, that we see the front end of what people are doing and their user queries, and we see the back end, but we didn't have any tools to really understand the middle of the system. And that happens all the time, really. But in the background there, Google was. Bill puts it really well. Really, I see Google's knowledge graph as a massive, great big almanac of ideas and concepts. And so, if you think of the web as a library of books and pages and ideas and concepts and records and videos and goodness knows what, and then you've got this almanac that the librarian is writing about where the hell everything is and what links to what and stuff like that. The almanac is the knowledge graph, really. And I think that as that's getting better, Google's then exposing that more and more and more and more. And they don't necessarily say when they're exposing it. And, Bill has to, pick it out and say that carousel, that's interesting. That's got to be using the knowledge graph for that, or the knowledge panel or whatever. And it's starting to expose itself. But as SEOs, we've been bloody useless at thinking in terms of concepts and entities because there weren't really tools out there to do it.
I optimized my first web page for entities in 2005.
So
I absolutely failed at ranking a page for Black History Baltimore.
Oh, I remember this story.
Yeah, we couldn't get past ranking 100th. There are too many other good pages.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, there are lots of places people could actually visit in Baltimore. We were working on a baltimore.org visitors website. Said, let's give people places to go and see that are relevant.
Yeah.
They're famous historic churches. They're famous colleges. There's a 9-foot tall statue of Billie Holiday. There are townhouses that Frederick Douglass bought in the 60s that he built offices out of. These are places people could visit. Let's give them a walking tour of Baltimore.
And then Google sees the connections and says, you've got everything I need to say you're the authority on Black history in Baltimore. Yeah, absolutely.
We made the page about Black history in Baltimore, and it was better than repeating the word Black history in Baltimore 30 times. And
yeah, it is.
So it worked in 2005. Is that what
it worked in 2005? Within 6 weeks, no, within 2 months, it was the 6th most visited page on the site of a 300-page site.
Yeah. I think Google has always been kind of themed or entity, looking for entities. It wasn't called that. Then they were strings that they were looking for. Now they're actually looking for the things.
I think that's changed between 2005 and now is that back in 2005, you might disagree. I think that Google was sitting there and treating a page as a document object, and I think what's happened since is that it's now treating little snippets of text on the page as document objects. So you have many entities on the page. If you run Google's NLP algorithm, it shows you it's got several entities that it identifies on the page. So now it's picking out entities within content, not treating a page as a piece of.
I think that depends on the search engineer, because I know in 2006 Microsoft was doing object-oriented search where they were indexing objects on pages. They didn't call them entities. They didn't call them concepts. They called them objects. But they were finding facts and attributes for those facts and indexing those things.
Yeah.
So and that was Microsoft, who in 2006 wasn't nearly as popular as Google.
Yeah, they were doing page segmentation just after that as well, which was new.
They're doing block level page rank possibly.
Yeah. And now even Majestic does block level analysis, so it's all doable. Yeah. So I think you made an interesting point before I came on as well about the capitalization in the patents. We noticed that as well. But what it does is it means that Google, the entities that come back for Google, are highly biased towards proper nouns, people, places. Google is very good at spotting people, brands, and places. They're not good at spotting interest rates or or computer processes or concepts. Yet
Google's working on personal knowledge graphs. They're working on making sure the entities they uncover aren't necessarily highly notable entities as in a Wikipedia. So you have macaroni and cheese, which is an entity, but it's not a highly notable entity. And Google might give macaroni and cheese a knowledge graph, or knowledge panel, but it's not. Broccoli, same thing.
Lots of answers or questions and answers, that's for sure.
Yeah,
but we're definitely seeing. I mean, you can see it in their API, and that's where we come out with the new SEU Search Engine Understanding Score, because we're very aggressive at picking up entities. We can see that, in most industry sectors, it changes from industry sector to industry sector from what we're looking at. But we're running industry reports, which you can go and find on the site. You don't have to log in or anything to get to the industry reports. And we're seeing that really Google only finds, or at least identifies themselves as finding, about 20% of the ideas and concepts that we're finding. So they're only getting 20%ish of the understanding that they get, but this is still, they've still got further to go, and I think they're going to get there, and they're going to go there in leaps and bounds. But we're seeing that they're getting these capitalization kind of ideas much more strongly. It's not that they don't get the concept of marketing; they do. They'll get those concepts, but not unless the other concepts, unless the other right topics are on the page as well. You see what I mean?
So before there were tools for entity optimization, I used to look up things on web pages in Wikipedia to see if there are pages about them. So I had a client who had a apartment building they were trying to sell units from, and it was a 4-page website, and they missed lots of entities. Like if you got into the elevator of this apartment building, went to the basement, and got out, you walked into the Washington Metro line. So you're connected to all of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, and Southern Maryland. And you could go to 31 different Smithsonian museums from that Metro line. And these were the types of entities they really should have talked about on the web pages to show that you didn't have to face Washington commuting traffic if you lived in this apartment complex, which was a big selling plus for living there.
Which means now we have tools that do that for you. I know when I was doing SEO, by the way, people, I'm retired. I don't have clients anymore. I do it again because I enjoy doing it, not for money.
I tried.
If I was doing it for money, I'm poorly paid.
I tried retiring. They wouldn't let me do it. My wife just said, "You're getting under my feet," so she kicked me out and told me to do it all over again. So here I am.
Yeah, I got bored, is what it was with me. I decided to start some old stuff back up, but I found it to be an actual nuisance to try and optimize a page. Because in my case, I would go and download from Google the top 10 results, go to those pages, copy them, bring them into a text editor, break it down to the words on the page, and then pick out the entities myself. So what takes about 10 minutes now took me literally hours. So last night, using your tool, I was able to optimize a page in about 2.5 hours. Previously, looking at a good day. And I wrote the page as I was doing it.
Great.
So,
I'm glad it's working for you. I honestly, it's getting that, extracting that data now is, I think we're bloody cool at that. I think we could still get better at making our editor prettier, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So yeah.
Yeah, but it serves my purpose. I used to put it in, like I gave you, a text document.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll tell you guys, Terry has not moved on from 1995 on the instructions for a webinar.
Still use the same text editor I downloaded in the 90s to do SEO and build websites. So I still use it. It has
it did the job. It did the job.
Good. Yeah. Well, it works for me. I don't know it would work for everybody. Let's see now. I have some notes, people, actually. So I think the biggest shift for me has been the on-page optimization, moving from phrase-based matching for scoring pages to entity extraction and that sort of thing. I think there's still a lot of people that are struggling with that. And I think a tool like this is what will help them get it, because it'll be a lot easier to do.
It's really hard to get your head around thinking in terms of things and entities, because you can't always tell what's an entity without having something. And as you say, Bill, Wikipedia is just brilliant, because Wikipedia will give you, entity after entity. And whilst, of course, Google is building its own knowledge graph, and it's going to probably do what it did with Google Directory and, eventually drop its data source and run on its own 2 feet. We do know that they used Google's Wikipedia data as a training set to build that and Freebase to build out their knowledge graph at the start.
We see Google now analyzing audio in videos to better understand what's going on in those videos. So because the text that's associated with videos don't always describe everything that's happening in those videos.
And it read a million books as well, didn't it? So
and if you're searching for a quote from somebody, you probably want to watch it because you probably know who said it already. But you want to share that person saying that thing.
Yeah, so, I think that also. Well, sorry, Bill, didn't mean to cut you off.
So if Google provides a link to that person saying that quote, I love the smell of napalm in the morning from Apocalypse Now, right? It's more important to say, okay, Robert Duvall said that in Apocalypse Now versus here's Robert Duvall saying that.
Yeah.
So Google is no longer relying upon knowledge bases for information about the sources of quotes, because a lot of times the knowledge bases don't have those quotes in them.
Yeah, I
Those-
think they've been doing a lot of work with voice search too. Like when they had the free telephones, they got a lot of data to work with, and I think they're getting pretty good at that. And with YouTube, I think for the captioning, that kind of understanding speech would be huge because most captions are, not the easiest thing to edit.
And there are an incredible amount of images, pictures on the web. Google's analyzing what's in pictures so that they don't have to always resort to Wikipedia. If you ask a question about where do bears hunt, the answer based upon pictures is in middle of rivers for fish. And they can show you lots of pictures of bears with fish in their claws, in their mouth, and that's where they hunt.
I think there's an interesting challenge for SEOs, though, and that is part one of this whole move towards entity SEO or semantic SEO, whichever phrase we're going to end up with. I don't know which one's going to stick yet. Is feeding the beast, giving that information. How do you get your brand into and be associated? How do you get Adidas associated with footwear? How do you get Nokia associated with telephones, or whatever those? You've got to get your story aligned with the story that's that you're marketing to, and then that's part one, and we're sort of doing that. But part two, of course, is that hard bit, Terry, where you said, now they're answering the question for you, and then they don't need to send you traffic to your website. That's the real challenge for SEOs, of turning that knowledge graph back into money in your pocket. Not necessarily visitors to your website, but somebody buying your damn money and your business model having value in that world. Because as you say, Bill, if Google can just answer the question and not give any attribution necessarily to it, then the SEOs and the business model hasn't done its job. The business model needs to have it needs to have a situation whereby, even if it's the image says a story that says you've got to go and fly EasyJet to be able to get from here to here, because that's the only people that do it.
I think Google's trying to adjust for that. From what I'm seeing, one of the patents that talks about images that are shown with featured snippets was updated recently. They did a continuation patent where they updated the claims. And in the claims section, they said, when we show an image with a featured snippet answer, we'll try to use an image from the same source as the answer.
Excellent.
In the past, they didn't necessarily do that. Yeah. So with this new thing in the claims section, they're making an effort to trying to show images from the actual sources of answers.
And I've also seen that they are giving attribution where it's possible to give an attribution. Of course, you can't give an attribution for how tall was Abraham Lincoln no. Because it's a fact that anybody can have and share. But they still had to get it from a third party. But they could get it from many third parties, and therefore, in fact, they've probably got different heights and stuff. And they've got to take an average,
At some point, they're public domain. Yeah.
But you've got to, your business model has to rise above that. Doesn't it? Is my point. Your business model has to rise above that, and we've still got the challenge. SEOs still have the challenge of saying, I still need to get the customer to buy my product, or my customer to engage in my world. So I have to have something that's not given to Google, if you like. So we had back in my Majestic days, I had an argument with the other guys in the team about why don't we put we've got trust flow and citation flow. We've got a metric that could be for every web page, for every brand on the internet. We could give you a score. So why don't we put that in our code? And I lost the argument quite rightly, because we were just giving too much information to the Borg, and what's the point of giving it away when you're trying to have a product that you've spent a lot of time and energy and effort trying to have? You've got to keep it back, and it would have been a bad decision. So I was wrong, they were right. 'Twas ever thus.
Still good too.
Yeah, thank you. It's probably better. Probably going to get better now. I'm not around there very much.
Sometimes when you come up with scores, it's better off not saying too much about them. It's like result scores in Google's knowledge graph.
Yeah.
What is the result score to you?
What the score? When they give a confidence level?
They don't necessarily call it a confidence level. They never
Yeah.
refer to it as a confidence level.
Right.
It's a guess at how much a specific entity is being referred to in a query when somebody searches for it.
Right.
And it could be a fairly high number, it could be fairly low. They don't explain how they calculate that.
No, they don't. It's a bit messy. That whole the data that comes back in that API is a bit messy, and we've tried to clean it up because the free tool on the InLinks.net tool, all it does really is it compares their API and cleaned up with our API of stuff and cleaned up, so we can see which topics they picked up and which ones we haven't. And it's not the cleanest output, is it?
It's often accurate, but it's misleadingly accurate. Like I remember doing a search for Google in Google's knowledge graph and getting about 23, 24 results. The first one was some company in Mountain View, California that ran a search. But like the seventh one was Topeka, Kansas, which renamed itself Google Kansas one day to try to get Google Fiber.
Well, when I put so I've been fighting over that bloody knowledge graph because I've been quite famously, Jason Barnard will know this story. Dixon Jones, trying to get Dixon Jones as an entity has been a problem. I've done it now. I've got there now.
You mean the architect?
Exactly. So the
I had that problem too.
So I've got there now. I've got a knowledge panel. You've got to dig to find it. But more importantly for me, if I query the knowledge graph, I can see I'm in there and that's there. But also at the same time, other stuff has popped in. A Catherine Parker from so and so. There's some really weird stuff that's popped in there. And also my knowledge graph URL changed as well, which I think is a bit odd. I wasn't expecting that. So I don't know why that's happened. I don't know if someone's messing with me.
I'm really mystified by my knowledge panel because there's people also search for.
Yeah, so, and you've got was or something. Yeah.
Gene Roddenberry, Stephen Jobs, George Orwell.
He's a smart cookie, is this Bill Slawski, isn't he? Yeah. I mean, your knowledge panel is really rich. It's very good. And it's interesting that you're associated not with other SEOs so much. I think maybe Bill Hartz is in the list or something, but there's anybody called Bill. Basically, everybody in SEO is called Bill. I've realised.
There are like 3 or 4 SEOs, but
yeah. So yeah, but yours is good and quite very rich. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a problem. I had a senator. His name was exactly the same as mine. However, I did actually outrank him for years. And then all of a sudden, it became harder and harder, and then I couldn't take number 1 from him.
I think he went to the same
after
law
he's
school.
Died.
He went to the same law school I did.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's still, even after he's dead, he still outranks me.
Well, he didn't look anything like you. Because I think I would have remembered seeing you around the law school.
You might have seen me at one, but it wouldn't be for taking law, that's for sure. Anyhow, where we go from here?
Where are we heading?
Yeah, that's what I'm just looking up now. I make notes and.
Well, it's a good question. Where are we headed, Dixon?
Well, so I think that there's been a political battle between the concepts of AI-based search engine results and the old school PageRank kind of approach to search engine results for years within Google. But it's interesting to see the change of leadership in Google, and I think it's now, well, except that we've now got a change of leadership and we've got an ads guy in there, so I don't quite know what that means. But I think I think if you don't optimize for entities, then you're not going to have a future-proof future-proof world on the internet. And interestingly, that probably is going to mean that your knowledge, as it dissipates out into the ether of the internet, doesn't necessarily have to be on your website. You know, your LinkedIn profile is really important. When you're talking if you've got an article in the New York Times, that's really important. And everything that you do out in the community, whether it's you as an individual or a brand or a concept. How a concept survives out in the world is probably a good way to think about it, and sort of how Hurricane Katrina is then portrayed out in the internet, or the COVID virus, how that manifests itself. The bad example, but I think it'll be twisted. The story, the concept will be twisted by society, by all sorts of different people, by machines, some of which are in your control, some of which are not. But it's a story that just will carry on and will be changed by what it comes into contact with. I'm probably getting a little bit philosophical and
well, I wanted you to get a little bit philosophical concerning a slightly different topic.
Okay.
Context.
Yes.
How's your tool deal with context?
So our tool deals with context by analyzing what concepts are in the corpus of documents that we're analyzing. So if we're analyzing your own website, then we're analyzing whether it's 20 pages or 200 pages or 2,000. After 2,000 pages, we've probably got a pretty good idea. Adding another page is probably not going to make much difference to the knowledge graph, really. But as you add those that content, and you start picking out the entities, you've got 50 entities in a page, say. It could be anything, but 50 entities in a page. But then you start seeing all of those entities again and again and again and again, and then the context then becomes the fact that these, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama are mentioned together again and again, and we start to pick up patterns. But then we have a shortcut, really, when we're trying to optimize content, because we can then take a corpus of documents that are already decided as best of breed. So an obvious example is the top 10 results from Google for a key phrase. They're already defined as the best of breed, but you don't have to do that. You can put in, I've got 10 defined competitors, these 10 web pages, or if you're a government body, you can say, right, these 10 districts all have content on this subject. We want to be better than those, So you can take any set of documents that you think are already appropriate, and then we can build that context around the entities that are in those documents. So we're kind of using information back against itself to try and find the context. Of course, the natural language processing also uses verbs and words and stuff, and that's kind of part of our secret sauce as to how we're trying to see that context within sentences and stuff.
So you're finding frequently co-occurring terms that tend to appear on other pages that rank highly for the same words or terms.
Dixon, can I tell my experience?
Yes, please.
That was one of the best things they do, Bill. It shows you the context in the other documents. So it tells you this term appeared in 3 documents, etc. Correct? Dixon?
Yeah. So and sometimes we get it wrong, because sometimes we don't see a phrase and we get the 2 individual entity things and define them as entities separately. It's not perfect, but because of the way that we kind of display that, you can then, as a human being, use that to guide you and say, okay, I know.
I'd like to, because it gave me it would be like when you go through the process of collecting the proper keywords in the old days. His tool actually allows you to prioritize the entities that you're that have
Right.
been extracted and gives
Right.
you something to go on. So, for instance, certain word is 15 times on average in these documents. Well, then you want to have 15 times.
once you've chosen an entity, then you can build more context for your editor by saying, right, give me questions that are associated with this content, this idea, and that's a pretty good tool, isn't it, Harry? I mean, it's
that's what I found for writing your content. Yeah,
we don't know for sure.
One of the better tools I've seen for that. The
So
intuitive.
We try to use. We think we're getting more questions than answer the public are,
Yeah.
but I haven't done a proper test. But that's my benchmark, really. I think we should be getting.
So if you write a page about Lincoln,
yeah,
and you make sure you include terms like Emancipation Proclamation on that page, people know you're talking about the former president and not the car or the town in North Dakota.
Yes, Lincoln will have more than one entity associated with it for sure,
Right.
and we usually get them right. But as Terry found out when I did a demo yesterday, engine we're getting wrong. So SEOs are talking about engines, and we have not yet tied search engine to a different concept, and so that's one that we're getting wrong. And the system will fix itself. It will, but mostly we're getting it right.
So search engineer doesn't drive a train.
Search engineer probably doesn't drive a train. That's right. Yeah.
I can add that Dixon's tool allows you to tell them when they've made those sort of errors, so you can report it, and you're actually helping yourself and them to improve the data. And I think that's a very good point.
I mean, there's a huge amount of human curation in Google stuff as well. Google My Biz or Google Knowledge Panel, every time you try and do anything to change Knowledge Panel, a human being has to press a button, as I understand it. Maybe after a while they trust you, but it's certainly not instant and live, not for me anyway. And Google My Business as well. There's a lot of humans, looking over these kind of things. So there is oversight in the machine learning.
We do see automation in that process, like Google Trends, with them associating entity IDs with terms that are topics, not just search terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Google Trends is really. You've got to be careful now not to compare a topic with a search term now, haven't you? If you're using the compare, you've got to make sure that you don't mix those.
You're comparing apples to apples.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting, and we're tracking. That's our market trend data is also using entities, trying to take entities and work out how much interest there is. So we use the word interest, where it's not click volume, it's not search volume. It's also part
They're
of the
actually
source,
trying to measure interest.
And it's not bad. It's not bad. We've got some good stuff and some bad stuff, but it would be nice if Google would give us YouTube's log files, and then we could just associate entities with videos and things and get some more data. So if you happen to be a really big eBay or somebody with lots of traffic and lots of entities on your sites, let us know. Really, we can probably use that information. And
we're finding other sources to gauge interest. Like in Google Discover, you can now like topics. You click the little heart.
Yeah. But I don't think that's going to give enough information to start driving trend or opinion, really. And it will be very biased towards, middle-aged white guy, because we're the guys that do this kind of stuff, and that's why Wikipedia is so biased, is because it's a very narrow type of people that edit Wikipedia, and so
and that's why Google's trying to move away from relying solely upon Wikipedia. Why they're trying to extract entities from news sources, from authoritative web pages. Why they're analyzing audio in videos. Why they're analyzing images to learn about entities from those images that have nothing to do with Wikipedia, like bears hunting in streams for fish.
Yeah. It's their data sources of what they classify as an authority is really interesting. Jason Calico spends a lot of time. Jason Barnard from Calico spends a lot of time trying to record where he's seeing different data sources in knowledge panels, which is kind of interesting.
It reminds me of the authoritativeness that the process Google goes through for determining authoritativeness for local business entities, to include Google Maps. They tell you business name, they show you the website they associate with that. It's usually often the enterprise website for that business.
Yeah.
But they actually have a process they go through to make that determination.
I get the feeling that process is largely based on a feedback loop. So once you've decided that a LinkedIn entity is an authority, then the links from there are fine, as long as they can then get a link back and they can see two-way communication of a message. Well, so both sides are agreeing.
Verification helps a lot too.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I asked Dixon onto the show was on the dojo page in the Facebook group. He mentioned a report that InLinks did on how schema was helping SEO. There hasn't been a lot said about that, and I know it draws some people who don't believe it, and those who have believed it.
It was specifically we were testing about schema. So there's so many different types of schema: event schema, and review schema, and organization schema, and person schema, and God knows what. But we were specifically looking at something that isn't documented in the Google documents anyway, about schema. So they're not showing this as unofficial schema, but they seem to be using it as a signal. But about schema is basically you are telling Google, or in the schema, what this page is about and the main topics that it's about, and it also mentions other topics as well. So it's basically guiding a machine learning algorithm to shortcut instead of hoping that the machine learning will implicitly understand the concepts on the page. You're explicitly giving it a hierarchy, really.
Right.
So that's the way I put it. And so what we did was we got 20 different SEOs to take 20 different web pages and put schema on there, whether it's our schema or whether they cut and pasted the schema and put it up. And then we started measuring the impact of that on over the next month or so. There was some criticism to the module, or the mode that we did, because we didn't put in a proper control. I think it's not that I didn't have a control; it's just I didn't report on a control and should have done so. Bad, Dixon. For sure.
But that's all the tests, whether they say so or not, are the same.
It's true. But
do a test like we could in the old days, not now.
It doesn't work as well as, now I'm pretty much saying the schema combined with the internal linking but entity-based internal linking is definitely having, well, I say for me, definitely having an effect. We did there's a case study out from yesterday that came out yesterday on our blog about a customer who's there for a very big phrase and a competitive, and also for what a will knock you off the pedestal phase. So we'll see what happens with that now. But he says obviously he must have been a decent SEO before he started to be in the running anyway for the phrase. But ultimately, the schema plus internal links and it popped him on the #1 spot, and he let us report on it. So so you're more than welcome to go and look at that. But I think that the schema on its own is a signal. We did establish that Google was reading it, so I got confirmation from a Googler that they understood the schema. Right. I didn't get any feedback as to what they might or might not be doing with the schema, unfortunately. All they wanted to know that their system wasn't broken in reading it in the first place. I didn't get that much.
But the main thing is, right, when you're telling it, these are the entities that I think this page is about.
Yeah.
That's taking some of the confusion out of the process for Google.
And
It
you're
depends
also,
how much they trust you.
yeah, well, it's not like the old meta keywords kind of idea, because the meta keywords idea, we used to spam with all sorts of stuff. And the thing is, if you do that with this, all you're going to
It
do
won't
is
work.
split the context out into completely the wrong stuff. So,
Right.
but it isn't so dissimilar really to Google taking the title of a page and treating that as a good indicator of what the page is about.
When your schema and your content are inconsistent, and you're
Right.
sending mixed
Yeah.
messages to Google, that inconsistency is bound to hurt traffic
Poisonous,
that
yeah.
you might
I
receive.
agree. I agree, absolutely. And that's why it does become all about context. So if you, and it's also the one of the ways in which, if you're using our tool, you can bugger up your website. If you're going to make those associations incorrectly, you can make your rankings worse. You know, there's no point in seeing our recommendation that you've got to talk about engines, then you link to it and then you've talked about a combustion engine and you've just gone off down the wrong route. You've got to use you've got to use Brain 2.0. But
yeah, that would be in short supply.
Yeah, well, I think we've made it so that you can, you can at least have a chance, though, because what we're trying to do is make it so that SEOs understand the principles behind it, and then content writers don't have a heart attack when they see, a content brief and an audit brief and stuff.
Yeah,
a content writer needs their imagination as well. They've got to be allowed to write good content, really. You just want to say, please talk about these concepts.
Right. That's how I found it really helpful. I've never found a tool helpful in writing a page. I actually found your tool helpful because it told me, it suggested topics that I wouldn't have thought of myself.
I'd like to point out, Gary, Google Gary, that he's not being paid for this stuff.
No.
He's not being
Couldn't
paid.
pay me enough money to do that.
Although I will give you a link to my affiliate program if you want it. You've been very kind so far about it, and I'm sure it's only because I'm here. I'm sure.
No. You'll see. I'll be. When I decide a tool is worth talking about, I talk about it.
Thank you. It's definitely got a different approach, but it's also trying to not scare the hell out of everybody. I think some of the tools got very scary for normal human beings, and they weren't necessarily guiding us down good paths. I'm not suggesting that you can't misuse InLinks, but I am suggesting that when you put a link on a web page, if you got the association right, it should be. I know you pointed out earlier on that an example where it didn't, but it should be helping the user first, and the user should be then going to the page that is going to explain the damn thing you've just seen on the page. It's supposed to help, and if it doesn't, then if you're going to hurt the user, then you've also probably hurt your search rankings as well, because the two should be fairly aligned when they see context. They should be aligned.
When I was talking about that problem with the context, I was thinking that it was a place where I wouldn't want the reader to go off the page at that point.
But okay. If in that case you want to break the link. If you don't want them to leave the page,
right?
Then
That's
break the link, or I can't help with that. But if they sit there
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that if you wanted to work on something, that would be something that would be good.
Well, I mean,
upgrade.
Breaking the links are just a click away, so you can go through your list of the links that are created by the system.
It was easy to do.
But as in fact you got it in the list. The fact that we're using JavaScript to do half of this crap is also quite kind of interesting as well, because if you don't look through your list, you will have the link live on your site without having to go back to the So all of this, the JavaScript injects the links, injects the schema, and Google's just fine with that. That I did have a long talk about, and
I found it worked a lot better, Dixon, when
Yeah.
I actually pared down from the number of pages I was given it to work with. So I
Okay.
scaled down from
Yeah.
30,
Okay.
from over almost 40 down
Yeah.
to the free 20.
Yeah,
But
I think
not to
Yep.
save money, but more that those are my money pages.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So
those
those
are where
associations are important. You've got to get the associations of your key landing pages first, and
Yeah.
then you just all of the rest of your content you just add in, and then
Yeah.
all of the rest of that content it goes through and sees where you've talked about these concepts, and now it's only going to link to the ones you've associated. So all the information is going to move towards
And
your.
I did
your
find that
money.
it didn't repeat where I had already linked to an entity. It didn't
No, it'll
try
leave
and
that
link
alone.
to it as well. That was
That's good.
that
It
was
shouldn't do.
good.
It shouldn't do. Yeah,
So
yeah.
let me see. Is there anything else we can? Well, we're pretty well an hour already. We haven't really decided how long we're going to let these go. I know some of the search geeks used to go for an hour and a half, and then we'd talk an hour after that.
I think the younger generation though, they haven't got the attention span. I'm going to get shot now, and I'm going to get shot. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize to anybody below the age of 50.
Yeah, it pretty well covers what I had in the thing, unless you wanted to go over the individual tools. But I think that's pretty.
No, obviously, if people want to try InLinks.net, it's free for the first 20 pages. There's all sorts of buttons to get a one-to-one demo with me. Obviously, I'm going to try and sell you the paid version if you do that. But we want it to be a major tool. We want.
I think it will be.
The idea to be built in. It's not going to necessarily replace the other tools that are out there, but if people don't think about the process of doing entity SEO or semantic SEO or whatever we're going to call it, then they will, every time they wake up to a new algorithm, find themselves slipping down the things even more. But the other thing about getting involved with the entity side of things is that as Google comes out with new products like voice search or image search or whatever, you start popping up in those kind of places as well. Google Discover is a really good place for entity-based traffic to start popping up. So if you're an Android person, says we think you should look at this, this, and this. That's using the knowledge graph.
Well, it's not just Google, Alexa, all those. I forget what the devices are called that are going into homes now. They're actually building those into the infrastructure of new homes. So that's not going to be. It's not going to be something extra in a home. It's going to be.
Not in my bloody home. No, we 2, 3, 4, 5. Whenever Alexa Echo came out, one Christmas, apparently I won one. It just arrived in the post. Apparently EE, who's a big electrical energy company, had won the prize, and it arrived, and it was all packaged and stuff with supposedly from EE. And I thought, I didn't enter a competition, so we never opened it out of the packet. I thought, I don't know who this is, but I'm not having this. And we've never had an Echo or in the house. I mean, I'm sure we have. We've got it all on the bloody computers and stuff. But we haven't got an Alexa. We haven't got an OK Google box or whatever. And I think my family are kind of a bit paranoid about it now. So I'm okay with that. But doesn't mean to say that you don't need to think about in entities, because Google only, Alexa comes back with one answer usually. It better be yours.
When you have a Siri and a Google Now and an Alexa getting into arguments about the answers, it can be kind of amusing.
What they should do, they should do it. They're all three of them. They should have a system that says, "Okay, Alexa, talk to okay, Alexa, talk to Google," and Alexa then says something to Google, and then they can start playing with each other's algorithms and stuff. You can just listen to them arguing. That would be fun.
I have a Google speaker and I'll talk to it, and sometimes my phone will try to answer, and the speaker will say another device is answering you, or vice versa. Sometimes they work together well. Like the speaker will say, "Would you like me to send links to those stories to your phone?"
It's all quite creepy for me. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that. No. And I knew it was going to happen at some point. I was going to say, you know what? I'm too old. I've got to go and hide in my little cottage in Wales. And I'll get InLinks done, get out the other end, and I'm going to hide. I'm just going to switch off technology. The problem is even growing plants in the future are going to be, requiring AI. So
right. So the Internet of Things will make sure that you have a computer in your refrigerator and in your oven, and you start planning the menu for the evening, and your refrigerator will tell you you're almost out of milk. Your oven will say you're not cooking it at high enough temperature, and here's a recipe you should consider instead of burning everything again this time.
It's gonna. I mean, I've just got involved with in the UK as an organisation called the RSA, Royal Society of Arts, and they've got this kind of set of mission statements of trying to find ways in which you can take innovation and and turn it into things for good, really. And I think this is one of the big critical questions of the day: is how do we encourage humanity to use this as a force for good as opposed to a force for control? And that's the real and whether it's a business that's doing the control, or a government's going to try to do control, or a black hat hacker that's trying to do the control, or a marketing person, or a psychologist, or just a bully at work, at school. This there's so much opportunity for it to go two different ways, and of course it will go two different ways anyway. But to try and build systems that encourage us all to be better human beings, I think is a philosophical question, and it's going to take some, it's going to take some kind of government oversight, or at least some kind of community oversight to stop us from going down some pretty ugly looking paths. I'll stop there because I'm kind of getting all privacy law. I'm a big GDPR fan, and so I've built we're off the topic now. Sorry if I'm going off. You can tell me to shut up. That's all right.
Yeah, I guess we can end the show here pretty quick now. Is running out of stuff to talk about. So, well, unless you want to talk about Majestic some, but I guess that's kind of.
I don't want to feel. I mean, I feel I've pretty much hogged a lot of the day, and I don't want to overdo that. Majestic's got a brand new tool out called Majestic Social, and actually it's not. It's called Social Monitor. God, I can't even remember the name of my own tool. Anyway, it's kind of an interesting look. It's using its flow metrics on Twitter profiles to try and work out who is authority in different kind of concepts and areas and stuff. And it's well worth a look. If you haven't looked at it, it's actually a standalone platform from the main Majestic tool, and taking their world in a slightly different direction. And I know they've used it. We've used it to. It's good. It's good for finding a corpus of people that are authoritative on a particular subject. So it's kind of a good influencer finder tool. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Worth having a try.
I thought it might be like the tool on SEMrush that you can give it a keyword and a phone number or something like that, and it tells you whenever that was mentioned.
No, it's not. It's really not that. It's
okay.
It's really coming back with interesting finds of people that are influenced. So you do start with a keyword, but then it's trying to find people that are relevant with it. But then because it's got the flow metrics, it's got different things. So it's got contextual, some topical relevance and stuff. So it can say, just because you've just been talking about, Barack Obama doesn't make you an influencer of Barack Obama really necessarily, or influential around the subject of Barack Obama. So it's picking out some interesting lists that are different to other ways of doing the lists, I think. So
So
it'll be
it's kind
interesting to
of
have a look.
kind of a tool for finding influencers, and
Yeah, that's
the
exactly what
newest
it is. Yeah,
one
and
of
it's
the new
amazing.
marketing techniques is
It's amazing what you
influencers.
can do once you've crawled the whole web. It's amazing what you can do with that information.
Yeah.
Really, we don't actually have to have all the on page content to find some pretty interesting correlations and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
You refine the category tool anymore?
Look, I got to tell you, I only am involved as an ambassador of Majestic these days. I'm not involved in the inside story of it.
Okay.
So my heart, mind, and stuff is mostly on InLinks, but I do a monthly webinar with Majestic behind it, and I will also, hopefully, when we're out of bloody lockdown and going to conferences, I will go and talk with my Majestic hat on as well again, because I love what Majestic has done. I think they did an incredible job of changing the industry. But as to the nuances of what they've got coming down the road, I can't give you the same level of authority that I could before. I've lost that authority.
For me, that was one of my favorite tools for identifying it. Basically, the topics of the pages that I was getting links from. I think that became a lot more important than page rank and all that other malarkey.
The topical relevancy was kind of good, and they have got a lot better with context, because they're now doing chunk, as you talked about before. They're analyzing pages in chunks, so every single page is put into sort of I think 20 different chunks. So basically every 5% of the page is measured independently, and the links are then sort of put in different areas, and you're reading the context around those pages, those links as well, so they're getting the contextual relevancy of that stuff. So if you want to go and find the links that are coming into a page anywhere, then now you can sit there and say, actually, I only want ones that are in the body text. I don't want them if they're sort of right at the top of the in the navigation structure at the top or the bottom. I also don't want them if they're surrounded by images, because they're a bunch of ads, and so you can start really playing around with that, and then you can also have on top of that, and I only want the pages that are topically in this category or that category as well. So those filters now are bloody slick. Actually, they're very, very slick.
I thought they were good before, so
they got a lot better around about October, November, I think, and they've really been pretty exciting. We did so Majestic hadn't done a big launch for a while, but in Brighton SEO, which is the largest conference in the UK, we booked out they've got a sort of a London Eye kind of thing that's goes up on the seafront, and it's and you can book it for an hour and give everyone wine and force them to watch your videos and things. So so they went and splashed out on that, which was cool. So yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, I guess we'll end the show, and it's been awesome talking with you, and always good to be with Bill.
Thank you ever so much for the invite, Terry. It's nice to be on the first one, and it's absolutely awesome being on a panel with Bill. I love being on a panel with Bill because it makes me look good.
Thank you, Dixon.
Bill makes us all look smarter than we are. Okay, then. Bye, folks. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, and look for the video on YouTube. There'll be references to the patents that Bill and I were talking about earlier. There's actually 5 of them, not just the 2 we spoke about. Good stuff. Okay, then. See you later. Bye for now.
Bye now.